Present. Vance Spearman.
Here.
Cindy Marshall. Cindy Marshall.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I
You're
couldn't
fine.
find it. I'm sorry.
But no, it is how every single one of these meetings goes. You're fine. Okay. Mr. Chairman, we have our quorum. 4 of your members, well, 3 of your members are present right now. You have a 4th member that will be right back. If you would like to proceed.
Okay. Let's see. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes from the March 11th meeting?
Looked good to me.
Yes.
And do I have a motion to approve?
Well, I move that we approve the previous minutes. Vance.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. And I also say aye. So, let's see. Legislation recommendations. Of course, we're pretty familiar with that. Since we just had a meeting on that a few days ago. Anybody have any comments, questions on that? Well, hearing none, then I guess we'll move to the next program funding.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
Do we need, now I know in other meetings we've needed to like mute our microphones because of all the feedback, unless we were speaking. Do we need to do that or not?
Right now, I don't hear a lot of feedback. So
Okay.
I will mute and unmute mine because it's easy enough, but if it's difficult, you don't need to right now. I don't hear feedback coming through, so.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to review the Animal Services Finance Report?
I didn't get it.
I looked at
You
it
didn't
briefly.
get it? Okay.
So, I mean, I might have gotten it. I just was not able to pull it up. But I don't think I could.
Okay.
I can go
Were
ahead and
you
read
able?
it right now.
I don't know if this answers or goes into your question, but how much of Prop P funds have we gotten? Has the shelter received so far?
So in the first, or I guess in the last fiscal year, which was January through June 30th, if you'll go to the second page of the shelter budget revenue, you'll see Prop P brought in $650,906.54. So about $650,000, which is a lot more than we had expected for our share just during that very brief period. However, with the pandemic and everything going on, a lot of people stayed inside. They obviously ordered things from Amazon and other things online. So that use tax was pretty high. And so it brought in that amount. We did go ahead and we had a carryover of funds of about $120,000 that we were able to carry over to start our year with, which was quite nice. The other funds, the remainder of those funds, I can't even do this sort of math, $530,000 was used towards personnel and to offset other revenues. But yeah, to answer your question, about $650,000 between January and June 30th.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's an awful lot.
So
What did we expect?
Well, it was expected, depending on who you talk to, anywhere between a total of 1.2 million to 1.5 million for the entire Prop P during an entire year. Now, our share of that would be about 600,000 to 750,000 because 750 is our max, but we figured that would be for an entire year. We would get between 600,000 and 750,000.
Well,
We did
okay.
not expect that in a 6-month period we would get, more than what we were expecting to possibly bring in the entire first year.
That 650 was the shelters portion.
Yes, that 650 was the shelters portion. An equal amount went to the police department for their portion.
Okay. And then is that 650 just for shelter expenses with the animals?
Yes, it's just to be used for shelter operations is the way it's phrased. So we've been using it for personnel costs.
So would it also include like the vet clinic and food and?
Yes, it could go for
whatever else you need.
Essentially, yes, it could go for medications. It can go for, anything and everything, all of those operating costs, all of those supplies. It can be used for. In all honesty, our budget is a little over, it's about 1.1, 1.2 million is just staffing. I mean, that is what eats up the majority of our costs. So most likely the majority of our costs are going to, for Prop P, are going to go straight to just paying staff. We do have some of them set aside for those medications, those vet supplies, those things, but the majority are going to that.
And then we have expenses staff.
Yeah. And then we have a separate fund also we have our Prop P dollars, which are going to be, the next time we have a meeting, you'll see a slightly different budget report because there'll be 2 pots of money because we have to keep the Prop P money separate from the other money. So 4710 will have one listing for Prop P and what all of the expenses were. And then 4705 will have the other listing. But you'll see both, and both will be accounted for.
So 4705 is a revenue account.
4705 is I'm going to mess with the exact name. I should know this, but it's the Recreation and Health Fund, which is actually a property tax fund. What we did this last year is the council voted to move animal services totally out of the general fund. So we have 2 different funds that are paid in 2 different ways, but neither are general funds. So we are not we're not at the whim of sales tax dollars going up and down from brick and mortar stores. We're more based in property taxes and the online use tax. And then revenue is also fed back in. So those adoptions, those surrender fees, those return to owner fees, any retail sales, any donations are all fed back into the budget.
Okay. But it's a source.
All of that used to go into the general fund, correct?
Correct. We used to be funded strictly from the general fund, but it was decided when Prop P was passed that it would be cleaner to make sure that we were just moved out of the general fund. There were other things that had been funded by the Recreation Health Fund that were moved out. And so we took those over to make it cleaner for budget purposes.
Okay.
Well,
Anything else on this?
So the shelter has other, I don't want to say income because that's really not what it is, but source of funds that they can use to pay for expenses other than the Prop P money. Am I understanding that correctly?
You are understanding that correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be another second fund. So we're not limited to just that $750,000. per year. We'll have another separate fund, which has over, I want to say over 800,000 in it, that helps make up and bridge that gap. And then we have, all that, the retail and all of the other revenues that come in from the shelter, which of course are not enough to support the shelter on its own. But yeah, we have that second source of funding that'll be there and that you'll see in the next report.
Okay. I'm sure it'll all help when it's all down on paper, visual.
Believe me, I'm sure if I spent a lot of time with these numbers before COVID hit, and then had to revisit and spend a lot of time with these numbers after. So it'll make a lot more sense when you see it on two different screens and how they come together to fund everything.
Perfect.
Does that include the county money?
It does include
the other.
The county money is $100,000 for operating expenses, the majority of which essentially covers an animal control officer going out, and then a little bit to help cover any animals that we do bring in that need sheltering, that have sheltering needs.
Okay, but that doesn't fall under the Prop P. Is that an entirely separate source of revenue?
Correct.
As far as on paper. On
paper, those dollars will be under 4705, which will be a separate account from Prop P dollars, which are designated as 4710 for us. Okay. Not to get too far into the weeds for you guys, but.
Okay. Any other questions on finance? Hearing none, then I guess we'll move to our animal control numbers.
And I'm going to beg the board's forgiveness. Our animal control numbers, I sent along our shelter report, but I didn't send along our animal control numbers in that report. With COVID and our operations right now, we've sent our admins home, and the one who normally does the report didn't have access to all of it. We were also working on getting numbers from other departments, which have a lot of their people working from home and a lot of crazy stuff going on. So there's still a couple of columns that aren't completed. So I'm going to beg forgiveness on this. I can try to, if you guys have specific questions, we can go ahead and try to answer them for you. Otherwise, if you want to talk about just the shelter statistics, we can talk about that too. It's just been, as you guys, I'm sure can imagine, how it's been in your lives also, kind of a crazy 4 or 5 months. So we're struggling to get all of those columns filled the way they need to be filled.
Okay. And that's something we'll have probably at our next meeting.
Yes, I actually think we got the very last of the numbers today, but it was too late to include and make sure that it was publicly noticed. So I didn't send them along. I think I have them all, but I'll have them for the full, what'll end up being essentially 9 months. I can give you everything up till then with the next meeting.
Okay.
I will tell you there's not too many surprises. Court was closed for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was a very crazy, weird time for us. But we do have the shelter number if anybody wants to discuss.
Okay.
I got a question on the volunteer statistics. How do you calculate foster hours?
I'm going to look over to Jennifer because she helps with that side of it. I know I put Jennifer on the spot. Okay. And apparently I put her really on the spot because Jennifer has disappeared. I see her on there on the screen, but she may be working to unmute herself. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to write that question down, and hopefully Jennifer will come back on with us shortly and we can re-ask it.
And then I've got another question. How, as far as on holidays, how much staff do you have on there on holidays, and what hours do they work?
It depends on the staff, depends on the holiday. Normally for our animal care techs, we'll have 2 of them there for the canine side and at least 1 there for the feline side. We usually have a vet tech there, though they may not be there all day. A member of management team is there. And that sometimes is it. If we have someone who desperately wants to be there and work the holiday, if we have something for them to do, when we go ahead and make that accommodation. Otherwise, since it's a city holiday, if it's a city holiday that we're looking at, then we treat it as such. We're already paying all of our staff for 8 hours for that day. So anything that they work in excess is overtime that we have to pay. So we try to keep those costs low and only have absolutely who needs to be there.
So like major holidays like 4th of July, you've got Labor Day coming up. So you'd have 2 canine care, a feline care, and a manager there for the whole day, or what?
Well, in a vet tech there for the whole day. Generally, yes. At least is what I guess I should say.
Okay.
Christina, is the veterinarian still there? Do we still have a veterinarian?
Yes, we do. We still have our same vet.
Okay.
Dr. Walker, she's still there. She's normally not there on holidays. Unless, in all honesty, she has come in on a holiday before. We try to avoid making staff come in, but
Right.
yeah.
If you would have an emergency or something, would she come in and take care of it if an animal were in dire need, do you think?
As long as she has not decided to fly to Hawaii or something crazy like that, which so far she has not.
Yeah.
So far, whenever we've needed her, even if it's just something for a quick consult, to make a decision about how much of an emergency it is, she's always available by phone. She's texting and emailing throughout the day with her vet techs. As many of you know, when it comes to the shelter, it's a 365-day operation. So even though we all try to have days off and we're gone, we're still there.
Right.
Christina, can you guys hear me now?
Is that Jennifer?
That is Jennifer. Jennifer, you fixed it.
Some technical difficulty with the settings. So, because I was talking, you guys just weren't hearing. So to answer the question, how do we figure the volunteer or the hours for foster? Is that what the question was again?
Yes.
Okay. So the volunteer coordinator is calculating that per animal for whatever days that animal is in foster, and what she's doing is she's just calculating 4 hours a day to account for the basic care. Far more time, I'm sure, goes into those foster animals, but that's what's calculated evenly across the board for each one.
Jack
So,
Cardwell.
if you're
Want to tell you I got on the line. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
So if you're fostering, say, a litter of puppies or kittens, is it 4 hours for each kitten, or is it just 4 hours for the whole group?
I believe she's fostering or she's calculating for each one.
So if you have a litter of 10, that's 40 hours a day?
Yeah, I honestly, I'm not sure. So while I was waiting to fix the thing, I called her in and asked her how she was calculating that. Clearly, well, we don't typically have large litters like that because I think that would be excessive to calculate like that. So, we may need to look at that. But that, I mean, she just, because it seems to me that maybe for a litter or something, that per animal might be excessive. But I can double back and check with her on that.
Are volunteers getting to work now at the shelter, or how's the shelter? Maybe this isn't the time to ask, but how's it being? Is it by appointment or?
It is by appointment only. What we're doing right now is volunteers, and this is a citywide policy for us. So it doesn't matter if it's Parks and Rec or if it's the shelter. Right now, volunteers aren't to be in city facilities. And that's just simply because there's a lot of PPE usage that has to be done. And, in all honesty, we're struggling to keep our workforce in place. Right. We've had, right now over a dozen staff members, I believe, have tested positive and throughout the city. And we're, whenever somebody tests positive, we have to quarantine everyone who's been in contact with them, which takes, sometimes dozens of other staff out of the running and out of the workforce for 14 days.
Right.
That's a long time. So we've made the decision to go ahead and continue. Volunteers are still allowed to obviously foster. They're gathering up supplies for us and dropping them off. They're coming and taking animals for furlough or for walks on the grounds. All of those things are acceptable. We have volunteers who are coming in to help, weed our flower gardens and do things like that, which are wonderful, but keeps them from having to utilize PPE, and it keeps our staff in what we would call their bubble. We've really encouraged our staff to stay in that bubble as much as possible, and, tried to take care of them the best we could during this time and keep them safe. So we miss our volunteers. We still talk to a lot of our volunteers. I still have a lot of volunteers texting me and Facebooking me, and we love them and we miss them. But, we also had, of course, one of our volunteers pass away just a few months ago, and we really don't want to lose anymore. So we want everybody to stay home and stay safe as much as they can.
Yeah, I understand. Totally.
Do you have any idea when volunteers will be allowed back into the building?
Well, that is all based on the city's phases. So we won't move forward into the next phase until we meet our gating criteria when it comes to coronavirus. And that all has to do with, the number of cases having a sustained decrease over a period of 14 days, having hospitalizations be down, having PPE be available. Right now, we have reports from not only city staff, but from the school districts, from our long-term care facilities, that, PPE is really hard to get a hold of. And so we know we're not hitting those criteria. We're not seeing a sustained decrease in the number of cases. In fact, in March, April, May, and June, all of those cases combined were still less than the number of cases we saw in July. So we know we're having a sustained increase in the number of cases. We're having a sustained increase in the positivity rate until we turn a corner and start bringing those numbers down. We start having hospitalizations go down. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't have a magic crystal ball that's going to tell me when it's safe for volunteers to come back in. I just know what we're looking for. And we haven't seen any of that so far. I wish we had, because if we had, I'd be back there and be able to get back to all of our normal duties.
Any other questions, comments on the animal control numbers?
I saw you had one that went lost or missing. What happened there? Do you know?
That was an animal that was sent out to foster that escaped.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions on the animal control numbers? Not hearing any. Go ahead.
No, oh, nothing. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
These virtual meetings throw me off too, so I'm. It's easier when we're all in a room and I can see you guys. I can figure out if you're trying to or going to ask something.
Yeah.
About the time we get this down pat, we'll go back to the real meetings, so face to face. Okay, then other discussion. Anything else pertinent we feel we need to discuss? Questions we need to ask?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
Can you hear
Cardwell.
me? Sorry.
Yes, sir, I can.
Sorry I was late. And I don't know if
That's
it's
all right.
time to bring it up, but I wanted to, I know you're all familiar with this, but I visited the Shep's Place for the Senior Dog Sanctuary and made a small contribution, and I'd recommend that any of us that could help them or be aware of what they're doing. I just want to make sure that you all are aware, and I'm sure you are, but it was...
They're located down on Truman Road, is that correct, Jack?
That's correct, around Truman and 291, and the outside of the facility, you can't tell how well it is set up for that purpose, but it's quite a nice little facility, and when I was there, they were down to four dogs, and I don't know how many they handle at a time, but it's they're getting some pretty good donations, they said, and it's quite a task. I'm proud to know that there's someone doing that.
They get some of the dogs, don't they, from the shelter? Is that correct?
They have.
Yeah.
They have. If they meet the criteria and we haven't been able to place, yeah, Chef's Place has helped us out. They're a wonderful organization. We cannot speak more highly of them. They fill that niche that is so badly needed in our community.
Yeah. I thought that was correct, that they don't take from an individual, but they can take from the shelter. And that is good. Dr. Clothier he's a nice man.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, it's always good to know that there's folks out there trying to help, especially with some of these older pets. Anything else we need to discuss? Christina, you were at study session Monday night. Anything mentioned on our letter that was sent forward, or a recommendation?
No, I have spoken to a member of the council, and they had a very brief discussion with me, and they were going to be probably there's going to be more of a discussion this next week. I will be there for Monday night's council session, and I'll await. I did forward, of course, the recommendation, the report all of that over Friday morning, first thing. So they all have it. And I requested that they give direction for how they would like staff to proceed. So I hope that very soon we will have that direction, but I do know that, of course, with the way public meetings need to be conducted, I know that some of that has to be publicly done for them. So I would expect that they could make some sort of instruction this next week.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I've got a question on what's your criteria as far as deciding which strays, and be it dogs or cats, that you go ahead and take into the shelter, and the ones that aren't taken into the shelter?
Well, whenever possible. I mean, if it's, of course, injured, ill, something like that, that's not an issue with bringing it right in. If it's healthy and it's a stray, one of the very first things we ask is if they can keep a hold of it and try to share on their neighborhood Facebook page, next door, whatever those social media apps are for their area, if they can try to check with their neighbors, other people that are around, if they recognize the animal. We've had a lot of success, and I know Jennifer knows these numbers better than I do, but I believe it's something like we've gone from a 20% return to owner rate up to an 85% return to owner rate, just by asking people to first check around with their neighbors. I think we all know that the majority of animals that are out and about are usually not far from home. There are ones that have definitely been dumped, and we understand that. But whenever possible, we ask if they can, and we try to schedule a time then to follow back up with them, or schedule a time for the animal to come in. Usually that's within just a day or two that they're scheduled to come in. We've had quite a few then say that they want to foster the animal if it's not claimed. But as I mentioned before, the majority of them, they end up finding the owner, which is wonderful and lovely, because we all know that animals that come into the shelter, there are some people who, for multiple reasons, won't come down to the shelter to recover their animal. And we want animals with their homes. If they're loving and it's a good place, we want them there. So we're hoping that this new method that seems to be working continues working, but we work with the people, the finders, so there's a lot of variation there.
Okay, so you're keeping track of all the ones that have come in, people have brought in, and you've not taken in?
We're doing our best. There are probably some, if they've come in physically, we try to snap that photo, get them into the system, and start essentially the clock right then on that stray hold. And then they're also in the system, and we can have that all tracked. We do have staff that are reaching out by email and by phone. Can I promise you that every single animal gets put in? No, because I'm not sure that every single finder shares all of the information as we go through.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Not hearing anything. I just want to thank all of you for attending the meeting and all your input, all your efforts. And then I guess we can adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Everybody be safe.
Yeah.